all of the above. You will see in my voting record, I have supported wind, I have supported solar, I have supported and even written bills for energy efficiency. I have written the bill with a Democratic friend to increase automobile fuel efficiency. As a conservative, I think it's natural that you would want to use less and be respectful of our natural resources. Now, part of the all of the above doesn't shut off the lights on our fossil fuels. In fact, when we look at where our economy is growing today, it's usually directly related to our energy boom in the United States. I embrace that energy boom. I think that makes us a stronger country. When I went up to western North Dakota and met laborers that are making up nearly $100,000 a year, I think that's good. So energy and energy independence, or at least North American energy independence, has been a goal of mine for years. And I really believe that this puts us on a road to prosperity. So when an idea like the Keystone Pipeline comes along, and I take the time to look at the environmental impact studies that were done, and all of the studies come back that it would not impact negatively our environment, particularly on the Ogallala Aquifer, which I focused on, and met with the geologists and met with the engineers. And when the conclusions from the nearly 20,000 pages of environmental study, which did look to see what would happen if there was a spill, it became obvious to me that it could be handled efficiently without impacting the Ogallala Aquifer. So therefore, I became a supporter. And right now, from the day that that permit was filed, it's been 2,229 days. That's a long time. The studies have been done. They've showed that it's in the national interest of our country and that it would have a negligible impact on the environment, the Ogallala Aquifer. So we should allow that to be built. And frankly, this is the most overbuilt in design pipeline in history. They've made major concessions. It is built or designed to the most modern standards and beyond. And I think we should go through with this. It's important for our country to be energy independent. It is important that we use the North American resources and not be beholden to OPEC countries. We can be energy independent if we think about North America. And I will continue to support an all of the above energy solution for our country. Thank you.
Congressman, thank you for rolling with the punches with us on that. For future candidates who come up here, Fred up front is going to kind of give you a signal as we go throughout. So he'll kind of give you a little wave 3 to 5 minutes in after the introduction, then after healthcare, and then when your time is almost up. We are running a little bit ahead of schedule, but that's a good thing, right? Let's dive right into the race for U.S. Senate. Joining us now, if he is ready to go, is Mr. Jim Jenkins.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thanks to the Sarpy County Chamber for hosting this. As we've gone through now nearly a year, at least in my case, I announced October 16th. I'm so grateful for groups such as yours having the willingness to organize this, for the news media to cover it. It appears that our political system is in danger quite frankly, of allowing candidates to stand behind walls of media. And so we need the press, and we need groups like yourselves willing to dig down and allow candidates more time. As I've joked before, and my fellow candidates will, I think, agree with me, we often get asked, what would you do about ISIS? And you have 90 seconds. You know, so having 15 minutes is a real luxury. For those that don't know me, my name is Jim Jenkins. I'm running as a nonpartisan candidate for the U.S. Senate. I'm from Custer County, Nebraska. Was raised out there on my family ranch, spent about 20 years outside of the state, working in places like Boston, Chicago, Columbus, Ohio. Married a woman from Chicago and finally convinced her that Nebraska might be a great place to raise her kids. She's not here tonight, but she's been very supportive, although she is looking forward to this campaign being over, I will admit to that. But I'm a small business person. I've had the privilege to start a dozen small businesses since returning to Nebraska. Not all of those businesses have been successful, but several have been very successful. I was a founder of the Whiskey Creek Steakhouse chain and a co-owner of Skeeter Barnes Restaurants. I've done wind development. I've chaired the Nebraska Ethanol Board. And so my work has literally taken me from one end of Nebraska to the other. And so I think I have a fairly good feel for Nebraskans. And the one thing that convinced me that I should run as a nonpartisan, and by the way, full disclosure, 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I was a Democrat. In fact, I was recruited 10 years ago by Senator Jim Exon to run for governor. I actually dipped my toe in that water for 2 or 3 months before deciding that running as a partisan was not for me. I decided to run as a partisan because I think this state, maybe more than any other state, is used to the nonpartisan template. We're, I think, independent-minded. Yes, we're conservative. Many of us now, a majority, call themselves Republicans. But as I've toured around this state, I think there's at least among both Republicans and Democrats, there's a real understanding that our nation is in political crisis. That crisis manifests itself in a dysfunctional Washington, a Washington that's bound up in gridlock, a Washington where Congress simply is not willing to work with one another on anything. You can see the major issues of our time: immigration, tax reform, the budget, the highway trust fund, our infrastructure collapsing. All of the major issues are going largely unattended because our two political parties, which have literally taken over Congress. Business Week, for example, probably a year ago, wrote an article that said that members no longer control Congress, parties did. And that wasn't always the case. I talked to my friend Mark Pryor, from Democratic senator from Arkansas, who's in a tough political race now, but he told me, he said, look, Jim, the problem right now is we don't have a normal legislative process. Committee work is largely filtered up through the leaders, and this is true in both the House and the Senate. The fact of the matter is we have a situation where our congressmen do not have the courage to govern. Our senators and Congress, they're always looking to the next election. My platform is centered, one of the critical parts of my platform is centered around Simpson Bowles. I've said specifically that we need to have a bipartisan agreement to deal with the deficit. It's undermining our country, it's undermining our security, it's undermining our democratic institutions. And yet, when you looked at Simpson Bowles a few years ago, when it was when the commission published its findings, the next day, the president, Nancy Pelosi, and the Republican leadership, Mitch McConnell, everybody walked away from it. I've said very specifically that in order to solve problems, you have to have a debate. But we're not having a debate in Congress. Right now, Harry Reid, nothing gets debated. The budget isn't being debated. You go over to the House, we've had a bipartisan tax reform worked on by Republican Dave Camp and a U.S. Senator, former U.S. Senator Max Baucus, a Democrat. That wasn't being debated and isn't being brought up because it's an election year. Immigration is a classic example of something that's not being debated. If we do not have debates, if Congress is not willing, whether it's Harry Reid or John Boehner, to allow for debate, we're not going to get a good outcome in policy. So I decided to stand up and hold the two parties account. And guess what? The two parties, when you look at this particular race, you have two partisan candidates. Neither of them are willing, party candidates, neither of them who appear willing to work across party lines on Simpson Bowles, on immigration, on almost anything. And I think that's a tragedy. It's undermining our country. It's undermining our democracy. It's turning people off all across our political spectrum. Okay, we moved through the first part. Now I want to move to the second part of the agenda, and that is addressing rising health care costs. And once again, lots of blame to go around. The problem is for 10 years, for the last 10 years, I've lobbied trying to get the healthcare system revised and reformed. As a small business person, I can tell you that I went for a dozen or more years with healthcare costs rising, premium costs rising at 4 to 5 times the rate of inflation. 4 to 5 times the rate of inflation. Back during the Republican-controlled Congress under George W. Bush, guess what happened? Nothing. I was back there lobbying on behalf of the Nebraska Restaurant Association when I was president. Nothing happened. I was delighted when Barack Obama and the Congress took up health care. I knew it was going to be a sticky wicket and a difficult situation. I admired their courage. However, I was very disappointed when, once again, when the bill came out of Congress, the Affordable Health Care Act came out of the Senate and the House, no amendments, no debate. That seems to be sort of par for the course, no normal legislative process. However, it was passed. The Supreme Court ruled it to be a legitimate law, and I certainly think that repealing it, first of all, is not a good idea, and second of all, it can't be done under this president. It's time for Democrats and Republicans to lay down their sword, which I doubt they are going to do, and actually begin working hard on behalf of the American people to fix the Affordable Care Act. There's a lot of things that the Congressman pointed out that both sides agree with. Portability, leaving a kid on until 26, some of the transparency that is in that bill. There are a lot of things that I support in that bill. But one thing I worry about, the bill lacks flexibility, especially for businesses. For small businesses, of course, it didn't put in place in the first year the exchange that small businesses could access. Small businesses don't have leverage in the marketplace, and yet, because we can't go out like a labor union, like a government, or like large organizations, corporations, and leverage ourselves in the marketplace. We need to buy health care along with a lot of other people. One of the other things I would say about health care, we have to have every single person in the system. So I support the expanded Medicaid coverage in the state of Nebraska and all over. The fact is, Nebraska hospitals are writing off 22%, this is according to the Nebraska Hospital Association, of all of their invoices. 22%, which amounts to almost $1 billion. Well, guess where that $1 billion ends up? A lot of it, right down on the top of people that don't have leverage in the marketplace, like myself. Small business people, who, by the way, have contributed historically to about 70% of the jobs in this country. So we're undermining our health care. We're leaving a whole bunch of people on the outside looking in, asking hospitals to take them through emergency rooms, which is very suboptimal. It's several $100 or several 100% more expensive to deal with, to deliver health care through the emergency room, and yet that's how a large number of people, literally tens of millions, are accessing our health care system. So we have to put everybody in the system, and I think it's atrocious, terrible, that Nebraska has not joined and expanded Medicare coverage or Medicaid coverage. The other things we have to do, the law really didn't address defensive medicine, tort reform. There's a lot of things that we need to do from a technological standpoint. Cleveland Clinic, for example, has driven healthcare costs down 20 to 30% over the last 4 or 5 years because of their implementation of technology. This is most of it completely outside the Accountable Care Act. I would like to see the federal government step in and provide grants and money to those organizations that are actually doing a great job of leveraging technology. One of the other problems we have with healthcare, and most of us know it, is that we have a 20% overutilization in our system. 20%, and most of that comes in the last 8 months of one's life. And so we have to figure out ways that we can stop overutilizing the system by 20%. That, all those costs flow down on top of small business people and all of us. The fact is, this is still the number one issue dragging down our economy. And I agree that the Affordable Health Care Act was jammed through. It didn't go through reconciliation. It wasn't debated. It wasn't discussed the way it should have been. It didn't go through a normal legislative process. Now, I will tell you, it wasn't the Democrats' fault alone. It was also Republicans who did not want to see any movement on that. So there's plenty of blame to go around, but at the end of the day, you can't have large-scale legislation go through the Congress, whether it's the Civil Rights Act of 1964 or the Voting Rights Act of 65 or EPA legislation in the Nixon administration or Ronald Reagan and Tim O'Neill working to reform the tax code. None of that can happen, my friends, without people working together. And yet, right now, we put the label as being more important than our country. We are clearly putting the party first, and I think all of us know it. I know that you're Republicans and Democrats, mostly out there. I'm asking you to consider moving in different directions, opening up primaries, asking Congress to move to a normal legislative process. I'm asking your parties to stop gerrymandering districts, which are leading to much of this discord and this dysfunction that is blocking the most important things facing our country. You know, I had an opportunity to travel to several third world countries over the last 3 or 4 years, most of those in Africa, and I can tell you, I witnessed firsthand what happens when you have ethnic, religious, or tribal conflict that is literally undermining those countries' ability. Countries like Nigeria, huge oil reserves, lots of farming potential, and yet going backwards because they have all of this discord. I don't mean to compare us to those third world countries at this point, but we're getting there. We're getting to the point where our infrastructure is declining, and because our two parties will not work together, we're starting to lose ground. Now moving on to the third issue that I was asked to talk about, and that is the Keystone Pipeline. First of all, you should understand my ranch sits over the Oklahoma Aquifer up in Custer County. I'm very concerned about the environment. I was president of Cambridge Alternative Power Company, a company devoted to energy conservation and solar, all sorts of wind energy back in Cambridge, Massachusetts when I was 24 years old. When I came back to Nebraska, I've had the opportunity to work on a dozen wind farm projects here in the state of Nebraska. I've also served as chairman of the Nebraska Ethanol Board. So I'm very committed to moving away from fossil fuels as quickly as we possibly can. On the other hand, our whole economy is based on fossil fuel. My farm, my businesses, my restaurant operations, everything we have is mostly dependent on fossil fuel. And I can tell you that until we can see the future and see a clear path to moving away, and I think we're on that path, it's just slower than most of us would like, anything that we do to undermine the fossil fuel economy is going to hurt small businesses and big businesses, and guess who else it's going to hurt? It's going to hurt all of the people working for those businesses. And where it's going to fall hardest is it's going to fall hardest on those people in poverty or who are at the low income brackets, who are dependent on going to and from work in their cars or trying to heat their houses with propane and fossil fuels and electricity made from fossil fuels. So back to the pipeline. I had a chance to sit down with a number of people who are very much opposed to the pipeline. Randy Thompson and several other people. I literally spent probably 4 or 5 hours in those folks' living rooms talking, or kitchens, talking about why they oppose the pipeline. But I finally, after waffling around a bit, I admit, after looking into it, I decided that I would support the pipeline and its alternative route under but with these caveats. First of all, I do think it should go through the Public Service Commission. Second of all, I believe that landowners, and I have letters, I've reviewed letters from TransCanada, and I can tell you they were treated poorly. And as a guy that worked on with 400 families across the state of Nebraska on wind easements, I'm very sensitive to the process where these large companies will come into our state and try to divide and conquer landowners, cutting different deals with different pockets of landowners. I think all the landowners, quite frankly, ought to know up front what the deal is, and they ought to be able to all have, if they choose, legal counsel. There ought to be a more organized way in which landowners are able to look at the deal they're provided, and we should not have a divide and conquer technique, which many big companies, both wind companies and fossil fuel companies, have used. So we need to have the landowners understand what's going on. There also ought to be enough bonding or surety bonding so that we have money to clean up any spills. And finally, we ought to know what's going through the pipeline. The local fire and rescue squads ought to know what chemicals are pushing that oil through. Having said that, just looking at the facts, and these are the facts as I understand them. The fact is pipelines have the lowest risk rate of any way of moving oil. The highest risk rates, of course, are in trucks, on trains, on barges, on ships. The fact is we have a number of fossil fuel pipelines that have been in our state for a long time. They're not completely without problems, but for the most part, they haven't created huge problems. We live in a messy world. And the fact of the matter is, if we can achieve North American energy independence, I think it's good for all of us. Now, I'm not suggesting that the pipeline one way or another is going to diminish that significantly, and that's also my point. That fossil fuel that's moving through that pipeline right now, TransCanada is finding alternative routes. Stopping that oil is not going to do anything to stop the tar sands and fossil fuel development up in Canada. So the fact is, we have right now, and this is a critical point, right by my ranch in Nebraska, not too many miles away, we have a 250 to 300% increase in rail cars carrying oil right across the Ogallala Aquifer. In fact, there was a story several weeks ago in the papers about the federal government trying to figure out a way to slow those trains down because of the accident problems that they're having. So the fact is, if we take away the emotion and understand that we live in a fossil fuel economy right now, and if you're like me, committed to wind and solar and conservation and ethanol and whatever else, then we have to understand that what is the safest way to move that oil around? And I think the safest way, if we would stop the emotion and stop sort of looking at it sort of on a one-time basis about this particular pipeline, we're going to understand that that oil is going to move all over the state, all over the nation, all over North America, whether we like it or not. So the solution, and by the way, it's not going to do anything about climate change. You know, one of my opponents mentioned earlier that, you know, somehow this is going to stop climate change. Listen, I thanks to the University of Nebraska for the work on climate change. I'm a guy that, as an agricultural person, takes climate change really seriously. It can have a long-term effect on my property and my family's income out into the future. So I'm a person that believes that we need to get with finding ways to limit emissions and limit the negative impacts of climate change. But I don't think this one pipeline is going to do that. So again, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Sarpy County Chamber, for allowing us to have 15 minutes. And I'm going to be in on time, so it'll be 14 and a half for me. But thanks a lot. It's great to be up here, and great to see all the other candidates here as well, except for one or two.
Mr. Jenkins, thank you very much.
Can I shake your hand sometime?
Yes.
I can?
Of course, yes. Next, I'd like to invite up Todd Watson, who is also running for U.S. Senate.
Hi, Papio. Hopefully you're doing well tonight. My name is Todd Watson, and I too am running as a nonpartisan candidate for the United States Senate. A little bit about me. I am a CPA by trade. Like you, though, I know 2 minus 3 doesn't work too well. And so my background was in taxation, had an emphasis, or my master's in professional accounting with an emphasis in taxation. It started in public practice, and ironically enough, worked on bank taxation as well as oil taxation. I can't comment a lot on what I learned, although I can tell you I don't stand too close to those entities anymore. I'm married, have 4 young kids, and I am worried about their future very much. I do not see 2 parties willing to make the tough decisions, even sit down and talk with each other to move this country forward. And I'm very concerned about long-term liberty for their future and generally care about all individuals. Business owner and entrepreneur. And if you know anything about entrepreneurs, we tend to see solutions that do not exist. They're not visible to most other people. And I see that in government. And the first 2 businesses I started were in the staffing arena. And we fundamentally made placements for other companies and solved their toughest problems. So they would call me and say, Todd, here's our problem in our company. We need to find this individual. So I would go out and find that individual that I felt could solve that company's problem. And if you know anything about staffing, if you do a good job, they hire you over and over and over to do well. If you place a dud at the company, they don't call you anymore. And our companies flourished, and we expanded to 2 states before it was ultimately bought out. But that key skill is finding the right individual to solve the problem. And I know what I'm really good at. I'm good at administration. I understand economics very well. I understand monetary policy. But my best strength is being able to find the strengths in others and put them to work. So instead of demonizing the candidates or demonizing other politicians, I like to build them up. And I've seen throughout this race, we have an individual very skilled in law. I call Dave up on law issues. I see Sid Dinsdale, he's done great with banking, growing the economy. Call him. I've seen Ben Saps, he understands colleges a little bit. Want to pick his brain on that idea. Sid Dinsdale, Shane Osborne, served. He had clearance. I want to talk about intelligence issues with him. Talk veteran issues. And instead of trying to put the other person down and tell you I am better in every single category, that would be denying how the way God designed us. We're all given different talents. We have different experiences. And we need to pull those individuals in to craft better policy. Because we cannot afford anymore to be divided. We need some unity. And we need to get the best out of each individual and solve our problems as Americans. And start putting our country first. And being able to look our kids and grandkids in the eye and say, I left it better for you. You have a future because we've made the tough decisions. No one has the guts to do that anymore. So if you followed my campaign, we put the tough decisions on the table. We put details out there. We're not here for a popularity contest. I care more about the future. Because like my grandparents did, they didn't care about their second or third home. They cared if we got through school, we had a life to build and a family to build in the future. That was their legacy. When I'm older, that's the legacy I want to say to my kids and say, we did it right for you. Where's that spirit? It's not there anymore. And enough of this party politics. Put it down. Let's solve problems. We owe it to the next generation. We have 3 broken foundations. Our political, economic, and spiritual foundations are broken. John Adams said the greatest evil to the Constitution is 2 great parties. Both are violating the Constitution. Economically, we're broken. The Constitution gave us guidance. Capitalism works, but it needs to be set up in a framework that's constitutional. We changed that in 1913. Your massive inflation, your crashes, your class divides. The head of the snake is back in 1913. I don't think anyone understands or has even studied banking policy. But if we can fix that, we can reverse course, get our country back. Spiritually, George Washington said it is rightly impossible to govern the nation without God and the Bible. But we try to deny that. We need our spiritual roots back, and it is a thing that binds us. And last week we had a debate. We had pastors from all over North Omaha join together to hear our ideas. I felt it was imperative to listen, stand with them, and understand what is going on in their communities, because they're going to be the bedrock for building the base of who we are as Americans again. I've been here for you, Omaha. I don't know if anyone's been paying attention. We're at the Happy Hollow debate on economic policy. The elites in business around the state, we debated there. They heard our ideas. We talked about North Omaha. We were there. We're here at Papillion tonight. Papillion matters. We're going to be at the Wind and Solar Conference later this week in Creighton. We're showing up to listen because it's imperative. It's important. Omaha's important. So get off the TV and start listening to individuals that care. We're there. I want to talk through the energy situation. You asked about the pipeline. Pipeline is a very complicated topic. There's no easy answers. But I'll give you a direct answer. Yes, I'm in favor of the pipeline, and I'll tell you why. Most of the debates, again, are on money or the environment. Both very important things. But there's a third part of that triangle that I look at, it's national security. And in particular, we need Congress to declare war again. When you declare war, you have to look a mom and dad in the eye and say, I'm sending your son or daughter to war. I think that's the last thing I'd want to do, unless it meant the defense of this country, and we'll rise up and meet that challenge. But we are all over the world for the sake of oil. We have forgotten the Constitution, which says to call for the common defense and domestic tranquility, and instead we use our military to supervise 100 different lands. That's not the use of the military. So I am for it because I want to be 100% North American sourced in energy, so that we do not have to use our military or be around the world to protect mineral deposits. And I challenge people, why don't we start allocating costs into the product? We have dedicated segments of our military just dedicated to protecting the transport of oil around the world. What if we put that cost into foreign oil? What's the cost of terrorism funded by this foreign oil? How much does that cost this country? Is that put in the cost of foreign oil? What would the price be? And if we got true economic costs, we cut out the subsidies and tax credits of fossil fuels, what is the price on the market? I'm not a big fan of subsidies, but let's get accurate costs into play of all energy sources and let this market work. So I am in favor of the pipeline because it improves national security. And as Jim mentioned, we need to make sure that we do it in an environmentally responsible way, because we do care about our resources here in this state. And the money will be found in the farmers, the jobs will be here and gone tomorrow, but the farmers will free up rail, that's where the money lies. But they're both secondary concerns to my paramount issue of national security. Now the next issue you want to talk about is healthcare. And the fundamental problem in healthcare is costs. I don't care if you look at the old way, it was special interest run healthcare by the Republicans. Right now we're advocating for government-controlled healthcare. Both have proven out to be high inflationary items. No one's really dealt with cost control. I believe in markets. And I stand up to special interest groups if you followed my campaign. So the first thing is we've got to solve pre-existing conditions. That's the one thing that was in the program that needs to be solved. It's not solved by the market. Now, are we solving it the right way? I think there's better brainstorming to be done, but it needs to be addressed. But after that, there's a lot of things we can do in the market. We need to stand up to Democrats continually aligned with trial lawyers. Tort reform is significant cost to liability insurance. We need reasonable lawsuit actions within healthcare. We don't have reasonable right now. It's driving up liability rates. At the same time, we need to stand up to Republican special interest. In particular, look for pharmaceuticals and healthcare plans they propose. You won't find it. Why? Big donors. And there's three specific issues, and you can just look in pharmaceuticals. You have price fixing in Medicare. Where in the world is that free market? That is not a free market. That's price fixing. That needs to be eliminated. Reformulations that fundamentally do nothing to improve the drug get new patents. That should be stopped. You can buy off generic companies from producing certain drugs so that you do not have competition. Is that free market? And so I challenge any conservative in the room that thinks they have a party of free markets to say, you don't have a party of free markets. You can go right down the top donors. They don't allow banks. They can let them set interest rates. They control the volume of money. It's unconstitutional. I went through pharmaceuticals. Oil controls military policy. You don't have options at the pump. We need robust markets, and I will continue to advocate for that. We need price transparency in healthcare. We should know what we're paying before we go get a procedure done. It should be published. The fact we're still negotiating this is crazy, because once citizens have control of where they go, the quality that they're likely to receive, and how much it is, we'll make better decisions. Medicare. If you study Medicare, 10% pay something for services. 90% pay nothing. Of the 10% that pays, they use services 63% less. Skin in the game matters. And we've got to get skin in the game on every procedure. Because Medicare is broke. And we're just offering solutions to fix it. I didn't create your problem. You can get upset with my proposals, but I'm trying to solve it. Because I care about our oldest seniors, that Social Security is there for them, Medicare is for them. But we have to make tough decisions to make sure solvency is not in doubt for the long term. I'm a big believer in the ACO model. It can be done outside the ACA, it can be done inside the ACA. And when you fundamentally take the system and say, we are going to incent and reward based on overall community health as opposed to overall procedures, you will radically change behavior. And people will gravitate to the problems that they can make the biggest difference, as opposed to the procedures that collect the most money. And so when we change the long-term vision of the outcome, and that's how we're going to reward, that's where we're going to make a difference. But good luck with that when you have special interests controlling your party. Healthcare is so important. There's 3 of us that attended the Rural Healthcare Association to listen. You need to listen to people. That's what we do. I'm the only candidate that went to the Nebraska Nurses Association at UNO. Nurses are important. You should listen instead of assume you know. They can give you feedback. And listening was a skill in staffing. That's what made me successful. And I listened to citizens I trust and will continue to do so. Because we have to get back to the Constitution. You have to say, so help me God, and give an oath to defend the Constitution from threats foreign and domestic. And you should evaluate the 5 things that government is called to do and ask, is my senator going to be constitutional? And the first role is to establish justice, and the definition of justice is equality before the law. When you exempt senators from health care but not the citizens, is that equality before the law? When your donors that support your campaigns get special tax treatment, is that equality before the law? No. That's the first thing they break, is establishing justice. Enough. 2, we're to ensure the domestic tranquility. Tranquility is peace. Do you see tranquility in Washington with 2 parties? Peace should start there, but you don't see that. Domestic is Latin for home. The bedrock of strength in this country is our homes. And we try to isolate certain groups and talk about their definitions. Friends, we need strong homes across this country. I don't care your class, because this will be foundational to the strength of this country going forward. 3, we are to provide the common defense. We're focused on international engagements 24/7. How about some focus on the home front? Let's secure the border. We have a lot of crises at the border, and everyone focuses on immigration. Where does Ebola fit into the border? How about jobs leaving the country? Does that promote the general welfare? Border control and jobs would be nice. The 4th job is to promote. Keep in mind who Job 3, they said provide, but before they didn't use the word provide, they said promote. We're to promote the general welfare. It didn't say corporate welfare, it said general welfare. So we need to have a framework of what type of system and structure are we going to set up that promotes the general welfare of all people. That would be nice. And the last rule in the preamble is to ensure the blessings, and I challenge everyone, pull out that dictionary. Define blessings. They are gifts from God, and as long as we continue as a country to deny God being a part of our country, it's not going to work. We need to ensure the blessings of liberty, and Thomas Jefferson was best. He stood strongly against big government because big government creates tyranny and destroys liberty. But he also said banking institutions are the greatest threats to our liberties, not standing armies. I'm interested in liberty. Anyone wants to stand with Wall Street? No, thank you. Anyone wants to stand with more government control of my life? No, thank you. But those are the two options people are choosing. Wall Street controlled their lives. It's been a part of their lives for 100 years, grown numb to it. They need to wake up, read the definition, study the Federal Reserve, make the change, and it will improve the lives of all citizens. And big government, that's the issue of our time, and people are well aware of what's going on there. And then we have to ensure this liberty for our posterity and ourselves. We have to deal with deficits, debts, unfunded liabilities, so liberty passes on to my kids and your grandkids. You don't want to be lying in your grave and they're talking over it. They hurt our future. This is the time to stand up. This is the time to bury this political divide. This is the time to put someone who can negotiate, reconcile, solve problems, and move us forward or accept responsibility. If you continue down this line with the failure of this country, because they're not making any progress, you must take responsibility of your vote this year. You will be accountable. Make the change. I'm making the offer. And it's generally out of love. You can study my money. It is not there. You complain about the money. I don't have it. You complain about the parties. I'm not part of it. We're offering a solution. We're taking accountability. God bless you guys. Thanks for having us.
And our final U.S. Senate candidate joining us this evening, I'd like to invite up Dave Donovan.
Let me just say this. You've been sitting for 45 minutes. If you need to stand up and stretch a little bit, you won't distract me. I want to start with an observation that expresses gratitude to the Chamber of Commerce and to observe that the Chamber of Commerce is not a chamber of horrors. There's no reason not to be here tonight. There are many good reasons to be here tonight, and maybe a little reminder that though it's the week of Halloween, there's no Chamber of Horrors present. All is well. And all can be here. I have three tasks tonight. The first is to talk briefly in an introductory way about myself. The second is to talk about the trans-Canada Keystone XL pipeline, not the world of energy universe-wide, but about that subject. And the third is to talk about the cost of health care. And the question put to us is about the cost of health care, which implicates the Affordable Care Act and the health care delivery system. I was born in a midwife's home and raised in Cedar County in northeast Nebraska, outside a little town, Coleridge, into which every single resident could have come and found a seat in this auditorium. My hometown would not have filled it. The farm community around it that fed my high school might have, when combined and at its peak, filled it, but probably not.
I know that the high school would have taken about the first 10 or 12 rows over there on one side. But it is no more. I left there, went to the University of Nebraska before it merged with a nearby town, attended the University of Nebraska and its law school, so I am proud to be 100% the product of the public education system in Nebraska. Except for some time away in the United States Army and just a very few months of experimentation in Kansas City when the Royals weren't playing well, I have spent all of my life in Nebraska. I've lived here, worked here, raised my family here, married and converted a North Dakotan, seated in the front row, my wife Carol, to be a Nebraskan, and we are proud to be here in the part of this state, its history, its traditions, and we'd like to see them continue. It's been my privilege to contribute in small ways to the history of Nebraska. We've had 3 impeachments in our state's history. I was privileged to handle 2 of them. I missed the one in 1871. I also got to handle a banking crisis that threatened our state's treasury 30 years ago, a long time ago. When that happened, I never imagined there would be a time when in my life I would say to people that the United States should have done what we did in Nebraska when we had the problem in Lincoln years ago with the state equivalent of the Federal Deposit Insurance Guarantee Corporation and its fund. This is what we did. We put the bankers in jail. We removed the politician who was involved and was not effective and was in fact at one point convicted of a crime, and we did not bail out the institution. We went on, and it was better for everybody. There are other instances that I don't want to talk about, except that I suppose I can't avoid the first topic for tonight, which is the Trans-Canada Keystone XL pipeline, without starting with the observation that one of my professional responsibilities has been to stand for the farmers and the ranchers who oppose the pipeline going across their land. I was told by a professor at the University of Nebraska at Kearney last week that I am the first candidate, he knows of at least, for the United States Senate since direct elections to have handled a lawsuit of major significance as a lawyer while campaigning for the office of United States Senator. He then mentioned, well, it's been done before, but not during the popular election period, and he recalled Daniel Webster, John Quincy Adams, and I said, stop right there, I'll take that company. I want to say these things about the pipeline. I'm opposed to it. And let me give you a series of reasons, any one of which I think is adequate for a thoughtful person to oppose the Trans-Canada Keystone XL pipeline. First, the Nebraska reasons. The company, TransCanada, tried to take land from our landowners as long as 5 years ago. It didn't have a presidential permit. It didn't have authority to exercise the power of eminent domain in Nebraska. It didn't have a route across the United States. It didn't have permission to build in its own country, and it was pushing its way around. That's the first reason. The fitness of the applicant needs to be considered. Secondly, the company proposes to use an easement that would do these first in our history things. It would abandon the pipeline in the ground and leave it to a future generation of Nebraskans to clean up. We've never had a pipeline like that. The estimate is that it will cost $10 billion to build this one. Nice, neat, clean pipe, nice, neat, clean bolts, nice, neat machines, digging nice, neat trenches. Imagine the exponent that describes the cost to take it out down the road. That is unthinkable and should not be permitted. That same easement sets up a perfect storm between the landowner and the pipeline company over fault in the event of a spill. We're a comparative fault or comparative negligence state. That means something to a lawyer. It means that if you're 1% at fault and cause an economic loss, as contrasted with a personal injury, you're 100% at fault for the amount of the loss. In this case, it means a family fighting a great big transcontinental pipeline company over the question of fault and risking every time there's a spill that company will go broke. Never before have we had an easement like that in our state, and this easement should say the pipeline company is responsible for every spill unless a Nebraskan commits an intentional and willful and wrongful act, like shooting a hole in the pipeline, of course, the Nebraskan should be accountable for it. The pipeline company would pay Nebraskans once before construction, never again. But for 50 years, it would make a daily profit that would likely exceed the profit on all of the land involved in farming the entire length of the pipeline. If there's going to be one built, our landowners should be paid every year. It should be treated like rent that would create a source of revenue for our communities, wealth for our families, taxation for our state, and benefit that would turn the pipeline from a liability to an asset if it can be saved and if it should be built. Failing all of those tests in Nebraska, there should be no pipeline. Beyond that, TransCanada tried to dupe our legislature and got it done the second time around. And when that happened, we passed a law that bypassed the Public Service Commission, the Constitution, and the will of the people of Nebraska. The company, again, showed itself to be an unworthy applicant. Let's leave Nebraska for a minute. There's a lawsuit pending that will resolve that last issue. The Nebraska Supreme Court has it under advisement. Let's go to a broader set of circumstances about this pipeline. We've heard tonight that a pipeline is the safe way to transport oil. I agree, it's safer than trucks, it's safer than rail cars, but the question is, why should we transport tar sand oil at all? If this tar sand oil is squeezed out of the top 60 feet of the earth, which is where it has comes from, it will leave a surface mine the size of Nebraska minus our westernmost 8 counties in the Panhandle. Any other questions? In addition to that, 97% of the scientists in the world by their number, the United Nations scientific study, the United States scientific study, a separate one commissioned by the Congress long before this administration and tendered on a quadrennial basis, and the Canadian government scientists have said that tar sands should not be mined because of their environmental impact, which is adverse to the environment. Finally, why would we continue to support the development of infrastructure to exploit fossil fuels of that kind under the claim of energy independence when we know that this pipeline is going to a port in Texas to be loaded onto ships and have the product transported by ship overseas? It's not going to be subsidizing the fossil fuel industry with our taxpayer dollars, redirect that money to the United States and to Nebraska, exploit our wind, exploit our sun, use our growable and renewable energies, and make us energy independent in a way that's clean and permanent and employs Nebraskans. Healthcare. The Affordable Care Act is not going to be repealed in the same way that the political parties are not going to disappear. I was an independent and joined one because I knew that's the only effective way to be in this race. The Affordable Care Act has repairable mistakes. It should not have permitted insurance companies to drop old policies, substitute new ones, and reprice. It should have frozen policies in place, superimposed the desirable new levels of coverage, and allowed an actuarially sound period of time to adjust both reserves and premiums to eliminate complaints about dropping policies I like, getting policies I don't like, and experiencing a change in premium. One candidate for the Senate who made this his signature issue didn't appear for that rural health debate that Mr. Watson mentioned. At the end of that debate, entrepreneurs stood up to say that they had experienced 6-figure savings in premiums because of this statute. The statute is going to lower the cost for everybody when fully implemented because we're all going to be paying into the system instead of having 50 to 55 million Americans left out. A country this great, this powerful, this strong, this proud cannot leave out 1/6 of its citizens from its health care system and be a beacon to the world. We need to be a beacon to the world. by reinvesting confidence in our doctors, allowing them to prescribe plans of care after they decide on the methods they should use for diagnosis, instead of rewarding procedure after procedure after procedure ad nauseum. Give them the advantage of a bonus when they're right and do well. And as for tort reform, I know how to do this. Create a new standard of proof. Right now, it's the greater weight of the evidence to win a medical malpractice case. Make the standard of proof for the patient clear and convincing evidence. Give the doctor the benefit of the doubt at a clear and convincing evidence standard, and you'll see the lawsuits dry out, and all of the trial lawyers will think I'm a heretic because I said it, but that's the way to do it. Almost all of the cost. Where am I on time? Okay. Thank you. 3 minutes. Almost all of the cost, I appreciate that, of the health delivery system that is enormously extraordinary occurs either in the first 30 days of life or in the last year of life. That's the way human life is. We live longer, and as we've come to live longer, we've drugged that 1 year out to a longer period of time, and our health care costs are going up. We have to adjust for that. It's true. But the Medicare system is not broke, and the Social Security system is not broke. They are first in, first out systems. You collect this month's tax to pay this month's bills. That's the way they started. That's the way they've always worked. They've never been an IRA or a 401k. It is true, we must reinvigorate employment to build up the nation's payroll, employ more people at better wages so tax collections go up to sustain the system. We probably have to increase the qualification age slowly over time, starting with very young persons in the workforce right now, so we don't disrupt lives. But beyond that, raising the cap, adjusting the Social Security system, making Medicare work are well within our grasp with no harm to the American people, and we don't need a doomsdayer prophet to tell us it can't be done. Finally, the partisan divide. Of course there's a partisan divide. It can only be repaired from the inside. It has to be repaired by someone who has eschewed the entire process of getting elected to office within the partisan system. I've listened to Nebraskans about the kind of campaign you want, and I've done my level best to give you that kind of campaign, so when I arrive in Washington, the United States Senate seat belongs to you, and to nobody else.
Running for the 2nd Congressional District. You also heard from 3 of the 4 U.S. Senate candidates who have attended tonight's event and shared their platforms with us. At this time, Mr. Donovan said we've been sitting for a very long time. We're going to take a short intermission. If I could, I'd really quick like to thank the Monarch Broadcasting Department. They are carrying this all on the web for us live tonight, so everyone who is at home across the state and beyond who wishes to watch it can do so. So guys, thank you so much. Enjoy your quick break, kind of talk amongst yourselves. We're going to be back here in about 5-10 minutes so we can continue with the gubernatorial candidates in Nebraska.
There's no enough after you guys.
Yeah, you think I should mention it?
Mention what?
Yeah, but mention go with that, go with my normal petition for him.
Here's something else. The reason I'm running Here, I'll show you how to turn this. Here, I'll just go ahead.
used to $40,000.
Another topic.
Yeah, I loved your speech, man.
Hey, thanks.
That was good, man. I got my vote for you.
Oh, nice.
That's how a lot of people vote for you.
Oh, did you? Cool.
Yeah, man, that was the best speech here. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
That's the heart in it, man.
Yeah, we got to bring it, you know? Hopefully they're watching on this camera.
Oh yeah, hopefully. They take
The
care
goal of media is to disseminate information.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I think the one the most painful had to be the first one. Oh, Terry, that was painful. It's like,
Yeah, he's done ready. I mean, he doesn't even. Energy independent.
I'm not shitting it. I'm not.
You gotta get real legend.
It's like if he loses, I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, we deal with it for 18 years already.
He was the one who said, I was like, well,
He said two. He said two terms.
two. Well, that was more of a theory, actually. A philosophical thing. Oh, come on.
I think people are getting upset. We need better candidates.
Well, I'll say one thing.
Democrats aren't really
What they're ever heard of stuff works. A guy named Kelly Johnson back in the 40s, 50s, they made the SR-71 and a whole bunch of high-tech stuff. They announced last week that they theoretical design for a low-grade fusion machine. And I said, well, how did you guys do this? Then if it was any other company that said they were BS those guys, I would have just listened to them. I said, if you can do that, that would change everything.
But it's not the industry. I'll say that.
No, like, it's different. You're not dealing with physical product. You're not dealing with uranium. You're dealing with a little bit of tritium, a little bit of deuterium, core. And you're superheating it. And the process, you're first you're tearing it apart, and then your magnetism, slamming it all together and making a miniature sun for a brief time. And then you convert this to just countless power. They said, design they're working on it. Well, if it doesn't contain, it shuts down. It's design. But the design they're working on fits on. Then I get that truck. Okay, that's like 100,000 households. It's like, that would bring all the other stuff they work on, that would be.
Everybody gave it kind of.
With that power, you can charge your batteries, or you can crack hydrogen out of seawater and have fuel cells if you really want that. I think
It's always
there's no Chernobyl in that system.
especially interest people in that country. Once it comes to life, they'll be like, oh no, you know, it's about
It's a very minute amount of deuterium tritium. It's like that. You don't need that much when you do
I told people. That's our first publication we ever released. We got some great parties coming up, like next year. Tomorrow we'll be at Sal's Clubhouse house. And the next day we'll be down there, $2 off the week.
Are you guys on the web?
Yeah, we got on the website.
That's good.
Where are you guys? So we're real people. We're still using the party. let's see what I might give it a try. I'm going to go with it. Yeah, I think I give it a try. Partially. Well, that's where I came from. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the Green Party a little bit. They're coming back. They're about halfway there. 1%, 1%, 1% of singers will get off. And then once you're a party, you have to get 5% in a statewide rate. So we're scheduled going on here right now. Next 2 years, we won't have any incentives out there, except for we do it the reservoirs in the statewide rate. We're going to get 5%. It's not that hard. It's the Green Party. It's not good. Oh, okay. Want to start? Really don't feel party? They are here. I told them I'd go on first. I told them I'd do it first. Yeah, if you were just I take, well, you know, I think I take them a little bit easy. I take them easily, but I kind of take them equally, I think, but I'm mainly trying to get people, like people that don't. I mean, I think that's it. You know, there's lots of other things. A lot of things. Yeah, this is well, so just be the national guys next time. The right next to you don't know, next to maybe you don't know. Not for midterm, I guess. It's so funny. No, that's good. Yeah, go by Mark. I go by G. I'm the oldest. Can't say I'm Scottish. Knock him down, bro. Yeah, man. I'm excited. Just let it flow. This is my first time. Let's get it. Good luck, man, with your campaign. Hope you run next time, too.
All right, folks, it's 7:45. I think we're going to go ahead and try and get things resumed here. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and try and pick up things and get everything back on schedule. We sure appreciate your patience. We're actually running ahead of schedule this evening, which normally would be a great thing, but when you're dealing with candidates who are trying to travel across the strait and reach as many people as possible, we want to keep them on time and the promised times we told them as well. So thank you so much for holding out for us and sticking around to hear from our candidates tonight. At this point in the evening, we're going to hear from the three men running for governor in the state of Nebraska. The rules are a little bit different this time around. This is still a forum, so each individual is going to come up and address all of you for 20 minutes each rather than the 15. We have asked the candidates to speak on 3 issues that we feel are important to Sarpy County voters. They will be sharing their platform. They will not be rebutting each other's comments. Again, that's when I will stand up, kind of put the hands up, and hopefully get everybody back on track. The topics they have been asked to speak on are the learning community, workforce development and the trade gap, and the expansion of Medicaid. Again, thank you all so much for being here this evening, and thank you to the Sarpy Chamber Government Affairs Group for bringing everyone here tonight. We're going to go ahead and get started with Mark G. Elworth Jr. We're going to welcome you to take the chair in this platform.
Hello, everybody. Really excited to be here. It's really my first time I've been out to do a candidate forum. My name is Mark Elworth Jr. I'm with the Libertarian Party, Nebraska's only third party here. I have a lot to talk about. A little bit about myself. I'm from Omaha. I grew up in Omaha. I'm 38 years old. I grew up in Midtown Omaha, just off Leavenworth Street there, right in the heart of Omaha. I started my political career in 2000. The year 2000, I waited for months and I got to meet Ralph Nader up on 22nd and Dodge, and it pretty much changed my whole world. I helped him sign petitions a couple times, got the Green Party was very involved with the Green Party, got them involved, got him on the ballot in 2004 as an independent. I've also worked with Normal, Nebraska, trying to help get petition signed to get the medical marijuana legalized here in Nebraska. And this is going to be my first time running. I joined the Libertarian Party last year. I really like what they're about. I want to give a little time to let you guys know what the Libertarian Party is about, and then I'll give a couple topics of what I'm about. The Libertarian Party is about minimum government, maximum freedom. We want to minimize government in your life. We want to minimize your tax dollars being spent. I feel it's a sin to waste your tax dollars. I'm very frugal. I'm from the working poor. I don't understand how all this money, millions of dollars you spend on research just to be thrown away. I don't understand all these contracts, how they spend so much money. I think they're wasting my tax dollars. I believe in maximum freedom. I believe in the individual rights and liberties to love, to live, love, work, and play. And that includes people that are gay and they want to be married. I totally support that. I support gay marriage, and I support everybody. All minorities, different religion groups, everybody should have the right to believe whatever religion they want to believe in, and we shall be respectful of all religions. I want to get the religion out of government also. I want to separate church from state. I want people to run their own lives. I want you to make your own choices. I know what's best for me. I do not believe the government knows what's best for me. I know what's best for me. These people doing research, I don't care. I know what's best for me. I'm an individual. I should have my own rights. I just don't trust politics anymore. That's a big part of the reason I ran here. I see a lot of greedy corrupt politicians. I'm not saying in this race, I'm just saying generally all over. I see corrupt politicians shaking hands with corrupt corporations doing their bidding and not doing the bidding of the taxpayers. I don't accept any donations at all. I ran off this whole campaign off $500. I want people to know that I work for you. When you come vote for me, I work for you. I don't work for other people. I work for the voters. That's the vote. I'm working for the vote. The Libertarian Party, I've been here for 1 year, and in that time, we have tripled the size of our party registered voters. We started at 2,200 voters when I joined the campaign back in September of last year. We're now at 6,500 registered voters. I love what we're doing. I love building this party. I enjoy running. I actually already feel like a winner. Win or lose, I feel like a winner. I feel like I built this party and help it to go. There's a lot of different items I really want to talk about. I want to end the police state. Every prisoner we have in prison costs the taxpayers $40,000 to put that person in that prison. We need to get those people vocationally trained, get them out of prison, get them jobs, get them careers. I also want to promote green energy in Nebraska. I want to put hemp and marijuana in our field to create a source for green energy here for Nebraska. People talk about this KXXL pipeline. It's a bad idea. Why do we want to move black oil and destroy Canada and bring it over to China just to destroy China? We need energy independence here. I've heard a lot about energy independence here. We can put marijuana in our fields, create ethanol. We can create oils with it, do the researches there. It's our farm fields. It cleans up our dirt. It cleans up our soil. It even takes radiation out. It keeps the radiation out of the soil. It keeps the water contained in our soils. There's a big report from the environmentalists come out, the UNL, that we're drying up. This is going to be the perfect crop. Same with canola. We need to look at this. We need to get also. I believe we need to make it fair for the private farms to grow this kind of stuff, grow their own crop, whatever crop it is. Right now they're getting pushed out. And as far as the environment goes, these family farms are going to run our state much better. And right now, they're getting pushed out by crony capitalism. They are getting propped up, these corporate farms, plus the chemical companies, all propped up by our own government, not giving the family farms the same with the small businesses and other corporations. We can't compete. I do support the $9 an hour wage being raised, minimum wage being put up there. Only because I don't really support more government and more rules, but I believe our government has worked against us, the people, and it's too hard for the people like me to even get out there and find anything. They caused it. I don't want to have to make more regulations, but by giving these big corporations money and cutting me off by the foot, I'm a small business. I've been in business since 1998. I've been in politics since 2000. I mean, they've done nothing but keep me down. All right, well, I'm going to move on to the next subject here. The learning community. I don't support the learning community. I want to take education down to the community level. I believe the community should be in charge of their educational systems. Government has no place in the classroom. It should be between the teachers, the parents, and the students. I think each community should decide how to run the school system. Me being from Omaha, I do support being a larger community in an urban community and being a little bit in disarray, more than being, look at this is beautiful over here. Sarpy County schools are great, but in Omaha, they're lacking. We need to look at it. I've looked into many options. Homeschooling is a great option. I want to expand that. I want to deregulate it. There's so many regulations with homeschooling. I want to make that available. I also support competition within the school system. I think within Omaha, not within the rest of the state. The rest of the state's fine. They can deal with their own school system. But within Omaha, I do support charter schools and a voucher system. I do not fully think that maybe a private school should receive the same voucher amount as a public school should. But I definitely do support a voucher system if the parents choose to change the schools. The homeschooling They have the best school, the best schools, the best scoring in SATs, ACTs. They all go farther in college. They all get better jobs. Behind that is the private schools. Behind that is the public schools. It's all statistics. And even below the public schools would be the OPS test scoring. Let's go ahead and talk about the workforce development. Right now, we are producing less skilled workers right now than ever before. And they're destined for low-paying jobs, even if they could even get them. What can we do about this? Well, we need affordable education. The education has gone skyrocketing. It'd be very hard to go back to college, have a full-time job, pay a rate for housing. Housing is very expensive. Cars are very expensive. Everything's expensive today. We need to somehow make it affordable, get these kids in school. We need to prepare our children. We need to create better opportunities for everybody. And when I say everybody, that's young, middle-aged, old, whoever wants to work. People that are currently at work, people who want better jobs, people that are out of work. We need to find jobs for everybody. We need to have a system that our small businesses can compete in. We need to lower taxes so they can compete. I want to also get, as I mentioned before, I want to get our prisoners right to work. When the prisoners get out of jail right now, or out of prison, they're pretty looked down upon. They can't find work. And if we can find work, we can keep them out of prison. They don't have to go back. I don't want to keep spending $40,000 on each prisoner. It's too much, and that's wasting people's lives, people's liberties. People deserve freedom to live their lives. But I mean, of course, not. We're not going to allow any sex offenders or any murders or anything. I'm talking minor deals like possession of marijuana, tax evasion, stuff like that. Stuff people don't need to be in there for. And of course, to make the workforce development go smooth, I want to lower taxes for small businesses. I want to decentralize as much as I can. Like I said with the energy, I want to decentralize. I want to bring the economy within the United States. We don't want to depend on foreign goods. That's where we're getting in trouble with. I would like to promote a tax-free goods made in Nebraska. I want to make those tax-free so we can promote an economy within. And I also want to cut the income taxation office off. That's keeping people down. That's keeping Americans down. That's keeping our Nebraskans down. If we can keep that money in the working people's hands, that's going to help them so much. And you know, the current administration has been looking for that. And I have all kinds of new revenue sources I want to bring to the table to make it happen. So we want to talk about the trade gap now. Basically, we've been increasing imports here in the United States, and we've been outsourcing all our jobs. There's loopholes in the law. We need to cut these loopholes out. These big corporations are saving money by sending our jobs overseas. The consumers are buying products from overseas. We need to do something about it. We need to let people know awareness. In my situation, might not be a lecture now, but definitely I can make you all aware that you should look at everything you buy. You should look at the tags on it. If you buy something made in China, I mean, you're ruining America right there. You're ruining Nebraska. This shouldn't be acceptable. Buy local, accept local goods. We can be independent and not dependent. And that goes with the energy, the green energy I was speaking of, the wind, solar, and the hemp energy. We can become energy independent. We can power our whole nation. We don't have to worry about some pipeline going through that's not even for us anyway. That's China's oil. It has nothing to do with our energy independence. And lastly, I'm going to talk about Medicaid. I really can't stand Obamacare. It makes me feel like it seems like it represents a special interest and not the people. It basically makes us slaves to the special interests. We're forced to buy something at their price that they're setting, or we be fined. I don't support it. But right now, it's the law, and we have to deal with it. And that's our law, and we are turning away money for our working poor, which is me. I can't afford insurance. My insurance rates was $297 a month. Making $7.50 an hour, I can't do it. So we need to make it the law for our working poor. Our economy is only as strong as its weakest link. I believe in trickle-up economy. We need to build the bottom up and trickle it up. The current notion here, they want to trickle it down give all the money to the top, but you know what? The top doesn't spend it. The bottom spends that money, the extra $1,000 at the bottom. They're going to go out and buy more goods, make more products. And we got to get that to the working poor. We got to get the insurance. We have to get them insured. I don't approve of it. They got to take it back to Washington and figure it out. It's not my job as the governor or our state's job to be turning away our working poor. They're turning our backs on them. I'm really upset with it. And, you know, if I get sick, I'm not going to go to the hospital. There's no option. I'm not going to ruin my credit. I'm probably just going to deal with it. I really appreciate your time. I hope you check out the Libertarian Party of Nebraska. We're just real people. We want to get everybody involved. If anybody ever wants to run, come on, get contact with us, because we're not any kind of special. We get everybody involved. Anybody that wants to. Look at me. I'm just a regular guy. You know, regular shirt. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And just a reminder, we really appreciate all of the candidates being here tonight with their schedules and with our schedule, hoping to have everyone here at the forum. We know people are coming and going. If you are out in the lobby, please keep the volume really low if you can so we can make sure the focus is on the candidate when they're speaking up here tonight. Do we have Mr. Hasbrook here with us? We do? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, another candidate.
Thank you, Brandy, and thanks all of you for coming this evening. I'm running for governor to get Nebraskans working together to build a better future for our children and our grandchildren, to strengthen our middle class, strengthen our communities, and create good jobs and genuine opportunity for every Nebraskan in every community, from the Missouri River here in Sarpy County to the North Platte River in the Panhandle. And I stress that because we will want Nebraska, and our state can only achieve its full potential if every one of our neighbors in the biblical sense has the opportunity to achieve their full potential, whether they live across the street, across the tracks, or across the state. And that's really been my life's calling. I spent 36 years at the Center for Rural Affairs during the last 17 years. And at the Center for Rural Affairs, I worked to create genuine opportunity for ordinary rural folks, small family farms, small business, and to create a future for a small town and rural way of life. Over the last 17 years, I was the executive director. We helped 10,000 small businesses across rural Nebraska by providing loans, training, and help putting together business plans. During that time, we grew to the nation's 9th largest small business administration microlender, and by far the nation's largest rural microlender. I spent 18 years on the University of Nebraska Board of Regents representing Northeast Nebraska. And the university was always important to me. And I ran for the Board of Regents first because to me the university represented opportunity. You know, my mom was one of the smartest people I know I've ever met. She's 91 years old now. But Mom has an 8th grade education because she never had the chance to go to high school. But I had a chance to go to college. And by starting out at a community college and working, I was able to graduate from the university with just $1,000 of debt. And when I got on the Board of Regents in 1995, you couldn't do that anymore because tuition had risen so much and earnings at student jobs hadn't kept up. So, and at that time, the university did not have a dollar in the budget to help those students who prepared themselves for college but just couldn't afford the tuition. So I made that my cause, and by the time I left, we had $12 million in the budget to provide a hand up for those students who'd done the work to prepare themselves for college but just couldn't afford the tuition without a little bit of a hand up. Now I'm running for governor, and I want to talk about 3 priorities kind of in line with each of the questions asked tonight. And the first of those is that we must build in Nebraska an education system that is second to none in America at enabling every one of our people to succeed as employees, as employers, as as entrepreneurs and as citizens. There's no greater strength a state can have in the 21st century. We face some challenges in that regard, and the biggest challenge we face is that we have too many children today in America and in Nebraska who start kindergarten already so far behind that the odds against them ever succeeding in school. And the learning community, and let me say that we all have a stake in addressing that. Everyone in this room, everyone in the state of Nebraska. Because if these kids aren't able to succeed in school, they're going to come back to cost us in prisons, in public assistance, in special education classes, and even in schools that don't work as effectively. And we have to remember that these young people are our future workforce. And if they don't gain the education they need to succeed, then we're not going to gain the workforce we need to succeed. And this relates very much to the second. And so I see the learning community as one of the tools we have to address that issue. I support the learning community because it is a way to bring the resources of the entire metropolitan community together to ensure that every child in the metropolitan community has an opportunity to gain the education and skills they need to succeed in the 21st century. Now, the learning community is like any piece of legislation that's designed to address a very complex, critical problem. Just take a stab at it, and as time goes forward, you learn some things from what you try, and you have to be open to revising it and working on it, make it work better, and refining it. So I'm certainly very open to working with members of the entire metropolitan community, Sarpy County and Douglas County, to find ways to make the learning community approach work better. But I think it's important that we stand by this approach of bringing the entire metropolitan community together to ensure that the educational needs of every student in the metropolitan area, in the metropolitan community, is met. One of the most critical things that we have to address if we're going to achieve that is early childhood education, because the problem starts with this issue of having so many kids who aren't getting what they need at home. If they start kindergarten already so far behind that the odds are against them ever succeeding. So part of that is beefing up preschool. I know the learning community is working on that, and the schools and throughout the state are working on that, and it's critical. Because if kids don't start kindergarten prepared to succeed, they're not going to succeed. So it's absolutely essential. We have a policy framework in place in the state of Nebraska for expanding preschool. The legislature puts additional money in that program each year to help more schools add preschool. We have over half the children in the state now in preschool, and we have to keep growing that out. But I also think we need to, in the learning community and across the state, look more broadly at even beyond or even before preschool, the first 3 years, and look at how we as a state can improve the educational content in our daycare settings, in our child care settings. Because most children who are falling behind come from disadvantaged families. And most of those kids spend their days in daycare, in child care. And the public is already investing in child care for those low-income kids, typically about $4,500 a year in state and federal subsidies. But in most cases, we're not, in many cases at least, we're not getting quality education in that child care setting. So I'm going to bring together the educators. We have some leading thinkers and scholars on early childhood education in Nebraska, people like Sam Mizell at the Buffalo Early Childhood Education Institute at the university, bring them together and come up with a plan on how we can improve the educational experience in those child care settings. Remember, we're already paying a good part of the bill. So I want to look at things like how we can use our educational service units to bring educational content into the daycare centers serving low-income kids. Maybe look at ideas like building a corps of senior volunteers, retired seniors who would go into daycare centers and read to kids and hold kids. And maybe look at a work-study program for our university students who need some help with the cost of college, and so that we pay them work-study and go into child care settings and read to kids. I think those are all things that we need to do to improve learning across our entire community. The learning community is an important framework for that because I think it brings the resources of the entire metropolitan community to it. problem is much broader and it requires a much greater focus on early childhood education. Now, the second topic then is how do we address the skills gap in the workforce development needs of our state? And I will tell you the two issues are very closely related. I'm talking to Ken Bird, who runs the Avenue Scholars Program here in the metropolitan area. And one of the things they do in the Avenue Scholars Program is they work with children and students from low-income backgrounds and help them make the transition to community college to learn a trade, to learn a skill. And Ken told me that in many cases the struggle is that we have students coming out of the school system in OPS that are in many cases at the 6th grade level, and they're simply not prepared to succeed in a trade school, in technical school. And so simply make the point that we're not going to solve our problem of having a shortage of people with the right workers with the right skills if we don't also address the early childhood education program. Now, the skill gap and the shortage of workers with skills in critical workforce shortage areas is real. We have many businesses in this state that want to grow their business and want to grow our economy, but can't because they can't hire people with the right set of skills. At the same time, we have many families who need better paying jobs. I think one of the best models I've seen to address this in the state is the model, and you have some of it here in Omaha, I think in the culinary field with Metro. Grand Island's probably taking the most comprehensive approach with its career academy. But in those cases, students in their junior year of high school are able to spend half their day taking community college courses in a technical field and have those courses count toward their high school graduation. So when they come out of high school, they may have a welding certificate or a certificate in writing code for computer programming that gives them the skill to earn a middle-class income and a foothold in the middle class, and gives employers the skilled workers they need to grow their business and grow our economy. Now, those are good programs, but they're not reaching nearly all the students they could be reaching in the state, and they're not covering all the workforce shortage areas that they could be covering in the state. So as governor, I want to provide the leadership to bring together our private sector, our community colleges, our high schools, to bring together a strategy and bring together the resources so that in all of our schools, addressing all of our technical workforce shortage areas, we can start building those programs that enable students who aren't applying for getting a four-year college degree to begin their junior year of high school to gain the skills they need to contribute to growing our economy and to earn a middle-class income. And to give you an idea of what this means for the middle class, a friend of mine went out to eat recently here in Omaha, or because we're not in Omaha, but in Omaha, and got to talk to the waitress. And the waitress was saying she made minimum wage. She has a good night there, she could beat minimum wage. But on the side, she was taking courses at Metro in welding. And when she finished her class in welding, she had a job waiting for her at $54,000 a year. So that's what good job training, good skill training can mean to building a strong middle class in our state. And it also helps grow our economy. So I want to bring together the players, community colleges, high schools, the state, and private industry to build out a strategy to ensure that we're putting the programs in place at all of our schools to address all of our workforce shortage areas. The last area I was asked to talk about was the expansion of Medicaid under the health care reform. And in the state of Nebraska, the effort to expand Medicaid to our working poor has been blocked. And I think that's a profound mistake. I think the profound mistake of putting politics and partisan politics ahead of what's best for the people of our state. And there are two groups of Nebraskans in particular who lose by the failure to expand Medicaid. And the first is our working poor. And let me give you an example. I stopped for gas a while back, and the woman who worked in the register at the gas station, I noticed I was running for governor, and she wanted to talk to me about Medicaid expansion. She told me her story. She and her husband have 4 children. Her husband works full-time every day and makes $8 an hour. She can't work during the day because if she did, the cost of child care would be more than she would make. So she works 7 nights a week in that gas station. They can't afford health insurance. If we expanded Medicaid, they'd be covered by that, but since we haven't, they're without health care. Not to say to you that I believe that when someone works that hard and can't afford coverage for their health care, it's wrong. It's wrong economically, it's wrong morally, and it's wrong. We Nebraskans value honest labor. And Nebraskans understand the dignity and hard work, even if it doesn't require a college degree. And given that, we need to honor by ensuring that people, families that work hard every day, are able to get the health care coverage they need for their family. And the irony of this is that husband and wife, if one of them quit their job, their income would be low enough that at least their kids would be covered by insurance. They're actually being penalized for work. And that's just wrong. If we expanded Medicaid, that family then could have insurance, could have more incentive to keep working. It would be better for them, and I think it would be better for our state. There's a second group of Nebraskans who lose by virtue of the refusal to expand Medicaid in the state. And that's every one of us in this auditorium tonight, every one of us in this state who buys private health insurance. Because we pay twice. We pay federal taxes to expand Medicaid in New York, California, Illinois, and Iowa. And then we pay the surcharge on our insurance premiums to pay hospitals for the cost of serving our working poor in the emergency room, because that's where they have to go for health care. They can't pay for it. They can't afford it. Somebody has to pay for it because the cost of the hospital is real. And so they pass it on to those of us who do have insurance. And our insurers pass it on to us. So we pay the surcharge on our insurance premium to pay for the cost of a political decision not to expand Medicaid. And to give you an example of what that means, and to bring it home, go right down the Missouri River. On the other side of the Missouri River, in Iowa, a Republican governor, Terry Branstad, put what was best for the people of Iowa ahead of partisan politics, and they expanded Medicaid. And insurance premiums on the Iowa side of the river are lower than insurance premiums for the same person, the same coverage on the Nebraska side of the river. And when I'm going to go to work in a bipartisan fashion to expand Medicaid. And we need to work to reform Medicaid too. Medicaid has some issues. The incentives are all wrong in Medicaid. For providers, Medicaid doesn't really provide incentive for healthcare providers to keep people healthy and out of the hospital. Or it doesn't reward them for doing a good job of follow-up care when somebody has surgery. In fact, they make more if the person has to come back for a second round of treatment to the hospital. We need to reform it to get the incentive right for the provider. Incentives aren't right for the patient. There's no incentive for the patient to be involved in a wellness program or to develop a relationship with a primary care physician, go to a primary care physician instead of the emergency room when they need care. So we need to reform the system. I want to bring together some of the best minds in medical care in Nebraska, providers, insurers, and others, consumers of medical care, and put together a plan for how we reform Medicaid to get the incentives right. And then use some of the money we can save to beef up the payment rates in Medicaid for the areas where we're just not paying enough and it's hurting us so much. And the number one priority is in mental health care. We so badly underpay for the rates we pay for mental health care in Medicaid are so low that mental health providers lose money every time they see a person on Medicaid. And the result of that is, or the effect of that, is that in many parts of Nebraska we have almost no mental health care providers, and even here in our metropolitan area, we don't have enough beds, we don't have enough providers, because we're just underpaying for the service. And if we reform Medicaid, get the incentives right, we could save some money that we could use to improve those reimbursement rates. Well, with that, I want to close. I'll just say this. I believe that Nebraska is one of America's best kept secrets. We have a great quality of life here. And we have that quality of life because we've had enemies. We're willing to make forward-looking decisions. And we're willing to make investments, some sacrifice to themselves, so that their children and grandchildren and their neighbors' children and grandchildren could have a better future. And we owe it to them to do the same. That's why I'm running for governor, and that's why I'd like your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hasselbrook. Do we have Mr. Liggins here with us? Sure. Again, we are so happy that so many of the candidates in these major races could join us tonight. We gave each of the candidates a tentative schedule as to when they would be here, and we know all of them have very busy schedules today, so we're going to wait just a few more minutes for our final candidate to show up here. In the meantime, just a shameless plug from KETV, we have really done our best to try and profile as many of these races and candidates as possible. KETV.com, we have many different stories. We have special hour-long series profiles with many of these candidates where you get to know them a little more in depth. Monarch Broadcasting, as well as running this live tonight, you can go back and re-watch, I believe, if there's something else that you want to learn or re-listen to. So with that being said, we're going to take about a 5-minute break. Stay in your seats if you would. We're going to begin here as soon as we can when Mr. Riggins shows up to wrap up our last candidate for the evening.
Some of these people think they win these things and they're off the shelf and whatever, dude. That's
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we certainly thank you for your patience. And again, thank you to all of the candidates who made time in their schedules. We are only 1 week away from Election Day, so we know they are jam-packed schedules going all across the state to talk to as many people as possible. So thank you to our candidates for making time for us here tonight. Just to recap, this is the last of the 3 gubernatorial candidates for Nebraska that are here with us tonight. We're going to have them speak on topics that are important to Sarpy County voters: the learning community, workforce development and the trade gap, and the expansion of Medicaid. 20 minutes for every candidate. You can include an introduction if you like as well. And then we will be complete for the evening. Thank you again, everyone, so much for joining us tonight. Right now, the third of our gubernatorial candidates to join us, Mr. Pete Ricketts.
Thank you all very much for allowing me the opportunity to come here tonight and talk about the important issues that we face here in the race. I appreciate you making time out of your busy schedules to come down here tonight. I've spent about, last 14 months, put about 63,000 miles in my car, driving around Nebraska, talking with folks about what I think is the fundamental question that we face here in the state, which is, how do we grow? How do we create more and better paying jobs? How do we keep more of our kids and grandkids here? How do we attract kids from across the country to come here? And so, as I've been driving around the state talking to Nebraskans about these issues, the things they've been telling me that we have to do really fall into 3 broad buckets. The first is tax reform. Many of you maybe saw that a few months ago on Fox News, they reported that if you look at overall tax burden, Nebraska's 3rd worst behind California and New York. We just had the article in the paper not too long ago that said we've got the 2nd highest cell phone taxes in the country. It's a barrier for us expanding here in the state. And the number 1 issue that people talk to me about is property taxes. And so whether you're a farmer or a rancher or a homeowner here in Omaha, property taxes is absolutely the number 1 issue. And so I put together a 4-point plan for how to address that. It calls for putting more money into the property tax credit relief fund, which is point 1. Curtailing the unfunded mandates we push down to counties and school districts is point 2. Making sure that we take valuations on ag land, the largest industry, down from 75% to 65%. And then finally, putting a cap on how fast valuations can go up so that we don't run into this problem in the future. So that's kind of that first big bucket. The second big bucket is growing agriculture and economy, growing the economy, especially agriculture and manufacturing. Now, folks, sometimes we may forget about it here in Omaha, but absolutely the number 1 issue for Nebraska is agriculture. It's our largest industry. 25% of our folks are employed in it, and it drives our economy. Even here in the Omaha area, 1 out of 6 or 7 jobs is tied directly back to production agriculture. And I got to tell you, I'm really excited about the opportunities we have because I was listening to Ronnie Green speak at UNL, and by 2050 there will be 2 billion more people on the face of the earth. And because of rising standards of living, we'll have to produce 100% more food. 70% of that will have to come from productivity and innovation. Well, folks, we sit in the most productive, innovative country the world's ever seen. We're ideally situated right here in Nebraska to be able to take advantage of it. And that's why I'm so excited to be running for governor, to help put together that plan. So I won't go into the details of it, but on my website, petericketts.com, you can find my plan for growing agriculture and my plan for growing manufacturing. And manufacturing is important because just like every other industry, agriculture has been impacted by technology. And we have fewer farm and ranch families. And if we want to continue to have strong, small towns, rural communities, we need to have other economic activity. And manufacturing provides that opportunity to be able to grow the state. Not just in Omaha and Lincoln, because we can't be a healthy state if that's the only place we're growing. We have to grow the entire state. And we can do that with manufacturing. And that's why I put together a plan to do just that. So that's kind of the second big bucket. And then the third big bucket is improving educational outcomes for all of our kids. And in particular, I want to focus on career and vocational training. I know that's one of the questions we're going to touch upon. But one of the key things there is that I have not talked to a manufacturer yet who hasn't told me they can't find enough welders or machinists or electricians. And it's a barrier for them expanding here in the state. And so when we get to that question, I'll talk a little more about that. But you put those three things together, tax reform, especially property taxes, growing the economy, especially agriculture and manufacturing, and improving educational outcomes, especially around career vocational training. And you have that plan for how we grow the state. And that's what I'll do as your governor. Work with folks like you and Nebraskans across the state and the folks in our unicamp to craft that plan so that we create those jobs, we keep our kids here, and that we allow Nebraska families to have the future they want and deserve, because that, at the end of the day, is what it's all about. So again, thank you all for coming out here tonight. I'll just go ahead and roll into the other questions that I was asked to address. Let's go ahead and start with that career vocational training. As I mentioned, this is a big issue for manufacturers all across the state. And if you think about it, when I was in junior high, everybody was required to take industrial arts. We all took woodworking, metalworking, electronics, cooking, sewing. Well, the West Side School District does not make that a requirement anymore. And I think that's a huge disservice to our kids, not to expose them to the career opportunities that are available in the skilled labor force. A friend of mine just wrote an article where he cited that 48% of recent college grads are working jobs where they don't require a college degree. In our community college system here in the state, 27% of the folks that are in the community colleges, going back to get another education, have a four-year degree already. So clearly, there's an opportunity for us to be able to expose kids to that at a younger age. And that's what I'll do as governor, is help work with the State Board of Education and our school districts to figure out what are the things we can do to encourage them. And we actually have a great example of that right here in Nebraska. It's called the Career Pathways Institute. And for those of you not familiar with it, it's a great public-private partnership. Grand Island Public Schools invested $8 million in renovating a warehouse. The local business community put in $2 million in state-of-the-art equipment. And Central Community College is providing teachers. And one of the things I really like about this program is that it's a competitive program. You have to apply to get in. And it starts changing that dynamic that we've had for too long in our school system, where we've said, the only way that you can be successful is go get that four-year degree. And it's just not true. It should be plan A, go get that four-year degree, or plan A, go into the skilled labor force. And the Career Pathways Institute makes it plan A to go into the skilled labor force. And I was talking to Astro Smith, just down the list, and they were telling me that if you go get a 2-year electrician's degree right out of high school and start working for them, you'll make $22, $23 an hour. Stay there a year and pass 2 tests, and you're making $28 an hour. Now think about that. That's a 21-year-old making $56,000 a year, plus full benefits. That's the start of a great career. And that's what we have to make sure our young people know at an early age, that those are the careers that they can have. And it's not just in towns on this side of the state, like Asheville Cement. Chief Industries has got 20 positions open today in Aurora, for if you've got a well, if you can weld. I was talking to Parent Manufacturing Alliance. They've got a young man there who's 20 years old, who's a diesel mechanic. He's making $20 an hour, plus full benefits. The people that are there have been there longer. Some of them are in 6 figures. And that's really key for not only what we're doing here in the Omaha area and in Lincoln, but for across the state. Because as I said, you can't be a healthy state unless we're growing the entire state. And one of the things young people talk to me about when they're making that decision about staying in their hometown and moving back to their hometown revolves around quality of life issues. And when you have a job in your community that pays $20 an hour or more, plus benefits, it addresses those issues of access to health care, shopping, restaurants, a lot of the things that we take for granted in the Omaha area. But it's very important in our small towns and rural communities. And those great paying jobs help support those quality of life issues. The local hospital knows they'll get paid. That $20 an hour supports the local coffee shop, so that young people know they have a place to socialize. All of that goes into that quality of life. And that's why it's so important that we continue to drive this idea that the skilled labor force has got to be a priority in our education system. And we are seeing schools make that change. And, I talked about the Career Pathways Institute. But Kearney is looking at doing something like that. Grant Lincoln's doing something like that. We've got schools in the Omaha area that are looking at doing something like that. That's what we have to do, is continue to encourage and foster that, to make sure our kids know that there's great opportunities out there. And look for those public-private partnerships. Get the private sector involved. Michigan's got a great program called the Michigan Advanced Technical Training Program. And in this case, the private sector, those companies are working with school districts to help design the curriculum and pay students part-time while they're in high school, then pay for their post-secondary education, and then hire them out of that. And so that's a great example of what we can do here in Nebraska to foster career vocational training. And that will be a top priority for me as governor. The second issue I was asked to address was the learning community. And to put it simply, the day that the bill that repeals the learning community falls on my desk, I will sign it. I don't think it's accomplishing the things that it was meant to do, and I don't think it's a good use of our taxpayer dollars. There's going to be better ways that we can do it to address some of those same issues. And I'm certain that working with the folks in the legislature, we can come up with those solutions are going to be. And so I'll work together with educators, superintendents, our State Board of Education, our senators in the Unit Council to figure out how we address that issue. How do we craft that solution that will help us grow the schools in the Omaha area, but also be something that's going to be working for our students. And then the final thing that I was asked to address was Medicaid expansion. I support Governor Heineman's decision not to expand Medicaid here in the state. I'm against Medicaid expansion for 3 reasons. First of all, it's an expansion of the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. And anybody who's paying, premiums knows what a disaster that has been. We were promised to be able to keep our doctors, keep our insurance companies, our insurance plans, and that hasn't turned out to be true at all. In fact, as I've traveled the state, one of the things I hear constantly is how it's made insurance unaffordable. Talking about manufacturing, I was talking to TSA Manufacturing in Omaha. They were telling me they have a 59-year-old man there who's single, and his premiums tripled, in part because he's paying for things such as maternity care, which he's never going to need. And so we've also seen things like not only premiums going up, but so do deductibles. I was talking to a gentleman who sells insurance in Bridgeport. He was telling me his deductible from the same plan went from $2,500 to $13,000. Now think about that. Insurance was meant to protect people against catastrophic financial loss. $13,000 is catastrophic financial loss to a lot of people. And if I'm looking at paying increased premiums for a deductible that I can't afford, why would I pay for the premium? And so that's part of what we've done. And so we need to go back and revisit that system, but we here in the state ought not to be a part of expanding that system. The second thing is that the government is promising to pay for this expansion of Medicaid. And let me tell you, the government is going to renege on their promise. Why? How do I know that? Well, because they already have. They did it with special education. The federal government promised to pay for 40% of the expansion of special education, and now they're paying for 18%. And just within this last week, we have seen how the federal government can change the rules, really at a drop of a hat. They just recalculated what we're going to have to pay in Medicaid, and over the next 2 years, the state of Nebraska will have to kick in an extra $76 million to the Medicaid program. That is going to be a huge issue to deal with in the next budget. And then the third reason is because the federal government will do things such as increasing the amount of money that we're going to put into Medicaid or renege on the promises, we here in the state are going to have to make up commitments. And that means that we will not have the money to invest in education and roads, things we need to invest in to be able to grow the state. So for those 3 reasons, I am against the Medicaid expansion and will continue to support Governor Heineman's position on that. All right, so we talked about career vocational training, we talked about the learning community, and we talked about Medicaid expansion. And since it's already getting late, I'm not going to bore you anymore with any more of the topics that I wasn't asked to talk about. So I'll just wrap up here. Thank you again for coming out tonight. I appreciate it. I look forward to earning your vote over the next 8 days. And what I will do as your governor is craft that plan for how we grow the state, just like we would for any business. How we're going to have tax reform, especially around property taxes. How we're going to grow the economy, especially agriculture and manufacturing, our two largest industries. And how we're going to improve educational outcomes for all of our kids, especially around career vocational training. And you put these three things together and you've got that plan to grow the state. And I look forward to working with you and the folks across the state to be able to make sure we create those jobs, keep our kids here, and allow Nebraska families to have that future. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here tonight. I hope you have a great evening, and only 8 more days. Get out there and vote. Thanks very much.
We would like to thank all of the gubernatorial candidates for being here with us this evening and taking time out of their schedules so close to this election day. 8 more days, as Mr. Ricketts said. And thank you, all of you, for coming here tonight to join us at the Sarpy Chamber Candidate Forum. Thank you, Million Vista Schools, for hosting the event, and Monarch Broadcasting, these fantastic kids, for giving their time as well to put this live online. We hope all of you learned something from tonight's event, and most importantly, that you will make a vote and an informed vote next week. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
My friends from Chinook are going to go live here at 10. They have a backpack, so they don't need to pipe in cables or anything. You guys leave the house lights up for them, so they can have those, like the stage lights and everything, whatever. Awesome. I'll go bug them. You guys did great. Thank you for being here and doing this.